Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The 9 leading Republican presidential candidates squared off last night in Las Vegas at the Venetian Casino, owned by Republican billionaire backer Sheldon Adelson. It was the first debate since Donald Trump shook up the race by proposing to ban Muslims from entering the United States. Trump has gained an all-time high in a recent national poll as he criticized the cost of wars in the Middle East Tuesday night. Trump was interrupted by protester Kai Newkirk, who decried billionaire politicians.
In my opinion...
Go ahead, Mr. Trump.
In my opinion, we've spent $4 trillion trying to topple various people that, frankly, if they were there and if we could have spent that $4 trillion in the United States to fix our roads, our bridges, and all of the other problems, our airports, and all of the other problems we have, we would have been a lot better off. I can tell you that right now.
Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, who's been trailing in the polls, took aim at Donald Trump's positions, including his proposal to ban Muslim immigrants.
Look, this is not a serious proposal. In fact, it will push the Muslim world, the Arab world, away from us at a time when we need to re-engage with them to be able to create a strategy to destroy ISIS. So Donald, is great at the one-liners, but he's a chaos candidate, and he'd be a chaos president. He would not be the commander-in-chief we need to keep our country safe.
Much of the debate focused on national security, with candidates pushing for increasing the size of the U.S. military, escalating the wars in the Middle East, and expanding the power of the National Security Agency. We'll talk more about last night's debate after headlines. Secretary of State John Kerry says the United States is not seeking the ouster of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Speaking in Moscow following talks with Russian leaders, Kerry backed the Russian demand that it be left to the Syrian people to determine if Assad remains in power.
The United States and our partners are not seeking so-called regime change, as it is known, in Syria. What we have said is that we don't believe that Assad himself has the ability to be able to lead the future Syria, but we didn't, we focused today not on our differences about what can or can be done immediately about Assad. We focused on a process.
Defense Secretary Ash Carter is in Iraq for talks on the U.S.-led campaign against the self-proclaimed Islamic State. His trip comes amidst revelations the United States has overlooked killings and torture by Shiite militias sponsored by the Iraqi government. Reuters reports both Iraq and the U.S. military launched investigations following the discovery in 2005 of a secret Baghdad prison where 168 prisoners were found in horrific conditions. Neither report was ever published. The U.S. report obtained by Reuters found evidence of extrajudicial killings and torture and implicated top Iraqi officials who remain in positions of power. Los Angeles schools have reopened today after the country's second-largest school system was shuttered Tuesday following a violent threat. While New York City received a nearly identical threat, authorities here declared it a hoax, while Los Angeles officials kept the district's 640,000 students at home. The emailed threats mentioned guns, explosives, and nerve gas and were routed through a server in Germany. Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti confirmed Tuesday the threats were not credible.
And we can now announce the FBI has determined this is not a credible threat, something we couldn't have announced earlier in the day. And I want to be very careful because that does not mean that it's conclusively one thing or another yet. Some have used words that I think are probably inappropriate, like hoax and other things. Whether it's criminal mischief, whether it's somebody testing vulnerabilities of multiple cities, we still do not know enough to say definitively. What we do know is that it will be safe for our children to return to school tomorrow.
Greek lawmakers have approved a new reform measure demanded by international lenders in exchange for the next batch of bailout funds. Outside the parliament, hundreds rallied against austerity measures and vowed to continue fighting the bailout terms accepted by Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras. Communist Party leader Dimitris Koutsavas was among those to protest.
This bill of prior actions that is being fast-tracked in Parliament, but also the austerity measures that are coming soon, show us that there is only one road for the workers' movement, a long continuous battle to fight against this system, against these measures that are bad for the people.
In Baltimore, Maryland, the jury in the case of William Porter, the first of 6 officers to face trial over the death of Freddie Gray, has deadlocked. After deliberating for 10 hours, jurors told the judge Tuesday they'd failed to reach a unanimous decision. They're set to continue deliberations today after the judge told them to keep going. Porter, one of 3 African-American officers charged in the case, is accused of failing to summon medical help when Freddie Gray requested it and failing to secure Gray's seatbelt. Porter faces up to 10 years in prison. Freddie Gray's family attorney has said his spine was 80% severed at the neck when he died in police custody, sparking an uprising in Baltimore over police treatment of African Americans. Israeli forces have shot dead 2 Palestinians during a raid on the Kalanja refugee camp in the occupied West Bank. Israeli authorities said the 2 young men attempted to ram vehicles into Israeli forces. Since the beginning of October, Israeli forces have killed about 120 Palestinians. Around 20 Israelis and 1 U.S. citizen have been killed over the same time period in Palestinian attacks. House Speaker Paul Ryan has announced a deal on a $1.1 trillion spending bill and a package of massive tax breaks Democrats say will unfairly benefit corporations. The deal would lift the 40-year ban on crude oil exports from the United States, extend tax breaks for wind and solar energy, and delay portions of President Obama's signature health care law. Privacy advocates have objected to the inclusion of a controversial cybersecurity bill they say will quietly expand mass surveillance by allowing corporations to share sensitive user data with law enforcement agencies. The House is expected to hold separate votes on the tax and spending portions of the deal by the end of the week. A new report shows executions in the United States have dropped to their lowest level in nearly 25 years. Of the 28 executions carried out in 2015, 13 took place in Texas, 6 in Missouri, 5 in Georgia. A total of 49 new death sentences were imposed this year, the lowest number since the early 70s when the Supreme Court blocked executions. The report comes amidst declining public support for the death penalty, halts on executions in a number of states, and a shortage of execution drugs following objections from European pharmaceutical companies. The mayor of Flint, Michigan, has declared a state of emergency over lead in the city's drinking water. Last year, the city switched its water source from the Detroit system to the Flint River. Despite switching back in October, Mayor Karen Weaver said lead levels remain higher than the federal threshold in many homes. A study released in September found the proportion of children under 5 with elevated lead levels in their blood nearly doubled following the switch. Weaver, who just became Flint's first woman mayor, made the announcement Monday night. A South Carolina state lawmaker has pre-filed a bill restricting access to Viagra and other erectile dysfunction medications for men in order to make a point about increasing restrictions on women's reproductive rights. The bill requires men seeking Viagra to undergo a 24-hour waiting period, submit a notarized affidavit from a sexual partner, be examined by a state-licensed sexual therapist, and attend outpatient counseling sessions. South Carolina State Representative Mia McLeod said she made the bill as complex as possible in order to prove a point about restrictions on abortion.
I purposely tried to make it as invasive, as intrusive, as hypocritical and unnecessary as possible to make the point.
Similar attempts to restrict Viagra access in Ohio and other states have so far been unsuccessful. And a group of United Nations experts has concluded the United States has failed to uphold gender equality. Following a visit to the United States, the 3 human rights experts from Poland, the United Kingdom, and Costa Rica said they were appalled by the over-incarceration of women, mostly for nonviolent crimes. They criticized the, quote, deeply disturbing condition of migrant women in detention centers and said they were shocked by the lack of accommodation for pregnant women in the workplace. According to the Huffington Post, the women told reporters the most telling moment of the trip was their visit to an abortion clinic in Alabama where they faced harassment from anti-choice protesters. Quote, it was kind of terrorism, the delegate from Poland said. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Hi, I'm Amy Goodman. I want to thank you for tuning in to Democracy Now! We are so grateful to our fans and followers for being a part of the daily conversation. By choosing a news source that's committed to the truth, you're carrying the message of independent media, reaching hundreds of thousands of people every day. In these times of war and elections, we need a media not sponsored by corporations that profit from war, but a media that's truly independent, funded by you. Democracy Now! Is not paid for by the weapons manufacturers, the insurance industry, or the oil, gas, coal, or nuclear companies. We don't take advertising or corporate underwriting dollars. That means we rely on your donations to make our daily independent news hour possible. We need your support today to keep bringing you the hard-hitting, in-depth reporting you've come to expect 5 days a week. Visit democracynow.org, or you can call 888-999-3877. That's 888-999-3877 to make your holiday gift to Democracy Now! Today. Thanks so much for sharing Democracy Now! Stories all year long.